Hello, everyone. Welcome. So, I want to talk a little bit today about how do we release cords and attachments that are holding us linked and emotionally battered due to the fact that we are in group bodies with people, places, and things on the earth. And as we are now moving through a period of demolition, where things are being destroyed, things are being shattered through climate change events, to all kinds of other events, pandemic, etc., etc. How do we let go? How do we become unattached to the desire that normal human beings have of trying to rescue or bring along the one that we feel connected and attached to? How do we actually achieve this? What's the process? How do we accomplish this? All right, we're gonna do a deep dive. So it is clear that the people that you congregate and socialize with, you create a collective consciousness called a group body or egregore with, that becomes so powerful that it becomes a protection system, a defense system, and a support system to help the collective, let's say that collective as a unit is a family. And you come for dinner together, you go to family reunion, and typically the egregore or the group body is maintained by events, ritual ceremonies that are done on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be light candle, incense burning, praying, like going to church. It can be very informal, like simply coming together with a group of people having dinner or having lunch. For example, if you're in a corporate setting or a work environment, the certain kind of behavior that the collective of the co-worker do together creates a bond and a group body, and the common goal of the corporate culture creates a group body. It creates an egregore that becomes a collective that you're corded or attached to. And this attachment and this cord becomes a defense, a protection, depending on the kind of company that you belong to. Or sometimes, if you, and it's important for us to understand this, because in a family setting, for example, the fact that they see you go for dinner, every evening you all gather together to eat, you'd get, everybody's at the table, everybody's eating. That collective ritual, or in the morning, there's a certain kind of ritual that you do together, have a quick breakfast, get everybody ready to go. On the weekend, certain activities that you do together. All of these things creates a connection, a bigger energetic body. And that energetic body will keep the individual members bonded together. So if for whatever reason, one of the individual members feels or is under attack and feels scared or feel completely disempowered in whatever way, the egregore will come in to try to give you strength. So the way it works, for example, for a family, if at some point I being a member of the family, find myself in certain kind of situation where I feel in danger, I will remember, let's say, for example, the survival technique and the saying that came from other member of the egregore, and I will immediately begin to act accordingly, causing me to have this ability to survive. Okay? The egregore also, depending on the kind of egregore it is, has a defense system meaning that if one member gets attacked, everyone in the collective gets attacked. So there is a defense. Sometimes it's energetic, sometimes it becomes also physical with physical altercations. The egregore also, if you as an individual belonging to it, try to emancipate out of it by disconnecting and pulling yourself out of that collective, you also have to do a lot of work to get rid of your connection to the group body. And when people separate, when people move away, let's say you were going to a church for a long time, and because this happened to me as far as spiritual group is concerned, and this happened to me a couple of times, where I belonged to a group or collective, and I spent years of working, and the environment became so toxic, I had to get out. And as I tried to pull myself out and extricate myself out of this, I pulled myself out of this. It took me, in the first instance, it took me 2 years to stop feeling empty. Because although I knew I couldn't go back, but I kept feeling like I was lost and disoriented. I was empty. Because the egregore was trying to pull me back. The energetic was trying to pull me back and made me realize that I belong, and without the egregore, I don't belong. I don't exist. I don't have an identity, right? And it took a long time, as I said, 2 years to finally find, and as a matter of fact, when you're in that state, you have to replace it with something else. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do it. The pull will be too strong. And this is the way we cord to each other. This is the way we are attached. This is the way we connect. This is the way we bond. And as the planet and the entire world is imploding through the deconstruction of the 3D grid, we will find that we have all kinds of attachments to people, places, and things that we have to figure out a way to let go of as the deconstruction happens, okay? And sometimes we don't think we're connected to things anymore until you hear, for example, of a loss, okay? And then we realize all of a sudden our mind goes through it and we keep remembering what had happened and who we were with and how important this person was or this memory was and the connection we used to have. And this thing keeps coming back, and emotionally you feel, you grieve, you start grieving. As I've said before, the greatest emotion that we need to process now as the 3D grid gets dismantled, and we have to do it with agility, is grief. As we are letting go and shedding all identity, all part of ourselves, we're shedding groups, communities, we're shedding relationships, we're shedding and trying to let go of all habits, behavior, addiction. We have to figure out a way to grieve very quickly all of these old things that we were connected to, that now as we move into our multidimensional awareness or higher dimensional awareness, that we are no longer what we were. We have to move into this newness, this emerging, and this landscape. Although we are not clear what the landscape of the future Earth looks like, or the 5D or 6D and beyond, but we have to be open to that exploration. We have to be open to that discovery. We have to be open to whatever is rendering or emerging in front of us. And that's the part that we have to allow ourselves to accept and to be, although it may not be clearly defined at first. And so at any point, as these things happen, let's say, for example, homes, environment you were in, and etc. There is an earthquake, there's a fire, there's a flood, and everything is leveled out. And as you are, and you may be safe, you may be, as you're happy to be alive, but whatever connection and emotional cord that may exist between you and the place, the thing, or the individual, or the community that will pull on you. And you may feel one or multiple or one of the 5 things. And it could be several of them could happen at the same time. The first is denial. The first step of grief is denial. The second part is anger. Third part is depression. And then there is negotiation, trying to make a deal with God to see if this, that, or the other were to happen, that situation would not have ended. If this, that were to happen, that person will still be alive. If this, that, were the other. And if you're doing this in your head or emotionally doing this, you are negotiating. And the final step is acceptance. And I'm saying this because I want you to understand that there are, and you could be, for example, you could be in denial and in anger at the same time. Or you could be in depression and negotiation at the same time. And this is the reason why sometimes I'm saying this, I don't want to rehash what happened. I don't want to do this every week because these events are going to get biblical, the climate change event, and they're going to get worse and worse. Okay? Fires that are all over the planet in France, Greece, Turkey, Siberia now. And when the last time the fire happened in Siberia, I forgot how many hectares, but it was over hundreds of thousands of hectares, not acres, or hectares that were burned, because the Russian government decided not to try to curb it and just let it burn wild.
It's actually, Pierre, the fires in Siberia, I saw it a few days ago, are bigger than all the fires combined in the world.
There you go.
Because they controlling nothing. There was a journalist, American journalist, who went to visit. They have 4 people with a shovel standing there just laughing. We're not doing anything.
Wow.
You know, one old fire truck and 4 people with a shovel. It's not.
Yep.
They went there to see because they were concerned what it does to overall environment. And
of course, because you're releasing all this carbon monoxide in the air.
Yeah, and then in the methane and other things.
Of course, you're warming the planet. You're warming the atmosphere because you're emitting all this.
And all this creates, at this point, it's creating its own weather. You know, there's extreme heat, and that's why they're saying that everything's happening faster than they predicted. The latest UN report.
Yes.
Because I think they didn't take that into account.
Yes. And more to the point, also it creates weird weather pattern. Yeah. Like in Italy, it was hailing yesterday.
Multiple times. So
giant rocks are falling from the sky. Yeah. The same thing was happening in Saudi Arabia. It snowed a week and a half ago in Brazil, where it's supposed to be 100 degrees right now. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to rehash all of this. But yeah. What I want to get into, the point I'm trying to make today, is to understand that as these things happen and things are getting destroyed, it's gonna generate fear. It's not conscious, because on the one hand, you look at the news as a news feed and you think to yourself, oh yeah, I'm okay with this, blah, blah, and you go on about your business, you go to work, you do your thing, but you're not sleeping correctly. You're not at rest, you're not at peace. At the edge of your consciousness, this knowledge is gnawing at you, okay? And that becomes like a toxic poison that you have to somehow find a way to release. Because if you don't address it directly, because the whole point of us, all of us becoming God and goddesses, we have to we have to address internally what's happening with us, particularly emotionally, with mastery. So if you're not acknowledging that this is bothering you on some level, and you're pretending that everything is okay, then you are in deep denial. And it's not just over grieving, but denial in general about everything that's going on, that it's not happening. Okay? And so we need to be very cautious and very cognizant that this kind of possibility of us being in having an attack, because I can feel it energetically that emotionally I'm not well. I'm not at peace. I feel internally something is not right, because the kind of release, the kind of surrender that I achieve with all my spiritual practice, I am not at that place. I'm not at that place. And it's not from lack of a practice, but it's emotionally something I'm processing that I'm trying to figure out a way to let go of. Right? Now, this is about the climate change stuff, but it could relate also to people in your life that have become so toxic because they are no longer on your bus. They are going somewhere else. They are so, and it could be friends, it could be family members, it could be people you were intimate with at one point, where you begin to realize they are not going to the place I'm going, and I need to stop having. It's not that you wish them ill, it's not that you want them to fall off the edge of the earth, but they are making different choices. And as they make these choices, you have to disconnect to them, because wherever they are going, and unfortunately, because of the polarization and the bifurcation that's happening in the world, a lot of time these people, as they peeled off, they become radicalized and they try. I don't mind somebody making their own choice if they are internally making their choice and they are not trying to impose the choice on me. But when people become radicalized and try to bully you into their point of view and trying to constantly, like a Jehovah's Witness, trying to tell you that Jesus is coming and they have the right answer, you have to get away from them. Because in that environment, that's the last pressure that I need. Because I'm not gonna go argue with you, because there is no, someone is that radicalized, there is no intellectual debate, there is no emotional appeal, there is no discussion whatsoever. You have to walk away. They've made a choice. And when that disconnection needs to happen, the grieving process will occur. It will occur. And sometimes the anger, depending on what the nature of the relationship, sometimes the anger can be very helpful to help you accelerate the grief. Because if let's say the relationship has become abusive and etc., if you get angry, it actually can help you process it faster and allow you. It may derail you emotionally slightly out of whack for a moment, but it will get you to the acceptance faster if you allow the anger to come up for you. And experience it and let it move through you, and then move to the next phase. The depression, the sense of, have I wasted my life with this relationship? I invested so much. How could that be? Blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And then the acceptance is to get to a point of saying, okay, it was not a waste. I learned this person was there as a catalyst to show to me weaknesses in my spiritual psychology that I didn't know were there. And I have to be grateful and thankful for them pointing this out to me. Therefore, I'm in acceptance of the role that they played, because the outside, meaning the person, the institution, the collective, even the climate change events, are nothing more than a mirror to show me what I need to correct internally. And if I can get to that space, I will be able to process this faster. I hope this is making sense and that you're getting what I'm saying. Okay, because I'm not trying to, I'm trying to give you examples that are very practical and very simple as a way to illustrate what could be a very abstract thing that I know all of you are feeling to a degree, because I'm feeling it very strongly, particularly this week for us who are Haitian in origin, with another earthquake hitting the island in the midst of a coronavirus and a president that was assassinated less than, on July 7th. And now this is happening now, less than a month later, about a month later. It's a lot. And then there are hurricanes. One of them just went through. There are two other ones that are formed that are coming. I had said this in this setting, and I'm going to repeat it again. This year will be marked by things falling from the sky, hail, snow, rain, and also earth rattling as earthquake and volcanic activity. The fires will be there as well, but added to that will be these two things. The best way I can describe it, in ancient time, before the gods, the Greek gods, came in and created, tamed the world, there were, according to early Greek mythology, there were beings that were called the Titans. They were pure force of nature that was untamed and unchained, that ruled the world. The father of Zeus, Kronos, is one of them. There are many other Titans as well that were giants, giant forces of nature that were completely untamed. One can create an analogy to the fact that the earth, prior to be habitable so that organic carbon-based life could grow in it, it was a pool of radiation, methane gas, and toxic fumes. And one could say that the consciousness of all of these forces that manifested as giant storms and etc. were the Titans. As we stand right now, the Titans, and according to Greek mythology, when Zeus managed to kill his father, Kronos, and became God of the creator, the creative principle, he imprisoned all of the Titan in the core of the earth under Mount Tartarus. And what's happening now is that these forces of nature, or the Titans, are being released. Slowly, one by one, they are awakening and they're getting released. And as they get released, they will get bigger and bigger and bigger. So, and the thing that's gnawing at my consciousness, not consciously, but when I go in meditation, I have to acknowledge it. It's survival, particularly with the climate change event, and thinking about where I am located and whether I am safe or not safe. And if I'm not safe, where do I go to find safety? I know that several of my clients were in California. That's their plight. They've been moving around. And just now, I met on Thursday with a couple and their kids, clients from California, who moved over to the East Coast. I have a client that was in Mount Shasta, who fled and moved all the way down to the near the Joshua Tree National Park because of the smoke and the fire. There is a sense of insecurity and, more importantly, survival. This catastrophic climate change event is triggering fight or flight. And there's a very specific uncomfortable sensation that it creates that exists in our kidneys and our adrenal. You need to check on yourself to make sure that these parts of you if I didn't know better the way I felt the past few days, I would say that I have a urinary tract infection because it feels like my kidneys and my back are hurting me bad. But I know that it's survival, fight or flight release from my from this hormone that's been triggered by all of these events. And I wanna lay it out with humanity and make you understand that I don't have all the answers. And I'm processing this, and I want you to understand that also. I don't know any spiritual teacher that can tell you, move to this location, that's where it's safe, because no such thing exists that I know of at this point. You have to be aware of your environment. You have to be able to process things, and you have to trust in your meditative practice and spiritual practice what the energetic that are coming to you and what they are trying to tell you. So if at a moment's notice you need to go, then you need to go. When you feel it's time to leave, you need to leave. So for me, that's the part that I'm becoming very aware of, and that's the part that I'm processing, and I'm allowing my consciousness to move in a way that's that's gonna give me the spiritual agility, the emotional and spiritual agility that I need to move through this. I'm acknowledging there's a discomfort in that part of my body, and that discomfort is connected to fight and flight, and more to the point with the fight and flight. Okay, if you are seeing a bus that's derailing down the street and coming with no brakes, you will look at the trajectory of where the bus is going. And then depending if it's coming on the sidewalk you're in, or if it's coming on the other sidewalk, you will know, because when your fight and flight hormones kicks in, you either pretend you're dead and drop down, or your muscle, the blood drains from your head, your limb become much stronger and much more agile. You have superhuman strength, and for a moment you could do miraculous things. This is the way we as a species, and for that matter, all animal species, have survived, right? When a lion is trying to jump on the gazelle realizes the danger. Sometimes they defecate immediately to empty their bowels out, and then they start jumping high. They maneuver in way. I've been watching a lot of wildlife encounters, and you should see what some of the animals, there was a rabbit and a leopard. The rabbit, it was moving in ways I didn't think it was possible. And the leopard could not catch up. And this is fight or flight. And the flight in this instance, you because of the adrenaline that's released, the danger, the perception of danger. So the way it works is that you look at the danger, and your body, the hormone takes over, and it finds a path for you to find the survival. It's highly draining on all of the other organs, because it takes resources from all of the other organs, and it begins to ask you to perform in a way, it takes over, right? So if the bus is coming on your side, you jump on the other side, you run, you do this, you save yourself, and then the danger passes, and then you relax back down, and you begin to calm down, and you go back to normal. But what happened if this is going on for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, or more? What happened when you cannot comprehend or understand the trajectory of the danger? Meaning the danger is so overwhelming and so big, you don't know when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and more to the point, where in the analysis, because in this instance where the danger is physical, you do an analysis, you think to yourself, like the rabbit, seeing the leopard running toward it decided the direction of the predator. You know, if you jump left and you jump at that high, you are going to escape it. So from the trajectory, you can figure out a way for you to survive. But when you're talking about forces of nature, like a hurricane, that's several miles wide. When you're talking about an earthquake where you don't even know, there are no warning system for earthquakes. They were talking about this, about the earthquake for Haiti. In the West Coast right now, they are trying to create a warning system. It will give people about a few seconds of warning. It's not like a volcano where you begin to hear rumbling and you know this is coming because smoke is coming and it's spewing a little bit of lava. This is like, it just 7.2 in the Richter scale in moments notice. So when you don't know these things, and it keeps happening over and over again, Haiti had it a few years ago, then there is a second one now. People are overstressed. And more to the point, in the back of this, you have connected to this the question that anyone who is a spiritual person would ask: why? Okay, this is huge, this is immense. Why? Why is this happening now? Why? And a lot of instances, particularly when you're connected to, let's say, collective, like say the Haitian people, and you see so many of them, they were saying, I think it was last count was 700 something, have died and several thousand missing and etc. How, and I'm connected to the group body. I'm Haitian of origin. So I'm connected to this group body. So how do I find through the grieving process a way to move with agility through this? Because there are other things that are coming. There are 2 hurricanes that are churning and moving toward the same island. So there's going to be more death, more things are going to be compromised. And I need to emotionally not continue and get this barrage of grief upon grief upon grief upon grief, and feeling in my body energetically worse and worse and worse. And if I were to keep asking God, why is this happening to the Haitian people? They're so poor and they're so destitute. You would drive yourself crazy doing this. Because we are not privy to that information. It is not for me to know nor to understand why this is happening. We know in a bigger scale why this is happening. It's climate change. It's related to all the things that we did wrong for the past, since the Industrial Revolution. We know why it's happening. Man was not living in harmony with the planet. We know why it's happening. But you can begin to get yourself caught into the, oh my God, I can't believe all these people are dead, and then that or the other, oh my God. And if you keep doing this, let's say you've lost people to coronavirus like I have, or people who have lost their home through the wildfires, or and so on and so forth. You have to get yourself to a point where you're not asking God why. Because the why asking God, it's negotiation. In the grieving scale, you're negotiating. And you're trying to find a way for God to forgive the people. Is there something that we can do if we're at fault, if we're sin for something? Can we atone for it so that it doesn't happen to us anymore? And there will be blame going in through your head. There will be a moment of reckoning, thinking it's because, and there is blame. Climate change is happening because humanity did the wrong thing, right? And the teaching moment is to realize going forward, I am making a commitment not to repeat the mistake that I've made in the past. But if you keep going on and on about the, the why is this happening? Is there something that we can do if we do a ritual, if we pray, if we do a ceremony, if we do, if we, in the past history, they would offer sacrifice, even in biblical time. This was the way to appease God. You offer a sacrifice. But what's happening now, well, we're past the point of offering sacrifice. The planet is warming up, and all of these events will continue to occur. And they will accelerate, and we will feel more and more what I'm feeling at this moment, which is this weird sensation in the kidney area that I'm trying to release, because my body is in super alert and concern over, and I'm not feeling just my fight or flight thing, because I'm Haitian and I belong to the collective of Haitian people. I am feeling the egregore in the group body that is now in high alert in Haiti and in the diaspora outside of Haiti right now, in the immigrants, because we're feeling the pain of the poor people whose entire life, and all the home, all the stuff that are destroying Haiti. There's no insurance company in Haiti. No one has insurance. A home that you build, it's a lifetime of work. That you build a home and you created the business you created. No one has insurance. If it gets destroyed, you lost everything. And you have to start from scratch again. So I'm using this as an example to illustrate my point of what may be happening to you about, and it could be for you, not a community. It could be an individual, a relationship. It could be an institution, a work environment. And as you try to let go and detach and move, again, the disorientation may occur, but more to the point in this instance for me, it's the weird sensation in the kidney area that I'm trying to release and let go. That's hyper stressing. Because when I try to go into alignment, that part of me, I cannot release it, because it's not just mine. I am picking up, there's 11 million people in Haiti right now. I'm picking up the group body. And since I'm energetically connected, I am sensing what they are sensing. Does that make any sense? Now, how do we achieve non-attachment to this? I've presented the issue and the problem, and going forward, we know this is going to be continuing. And as I said, these events are going to get biblical. They're going to get bigger and bigger and closer to. The best way I can describe the sensation of what's happening in my body, you keep feeling like a wall is getting closer and closer to you. The sense of survival or flight, fight, run, you keep feeling that there's a wall that's getting closer and closer to you. Whereas before there was a carefree, laissez-faire attitude that you may have had 3, 4, 5 years ago, it's not there anymore. So how do you overcome this? What do you do to achieve non-attachment? And for that, we're going to turn to Buddhism, because they have entire practice that are devoted to non-attachment. And what the Buddhists talk about, and the Dalai Lama described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you have to achieve enlightenment, you have to get yourself to a point to where you become, where it's the absence of existence and self-identity. You have to get yourself to a point where you completely because as I identify myself as Haitian, as I'm identifying and I belong therefore to the Haitian egregore group body, as I identify myself as being Black, I identify to that group body. As I identify myself as a male, I identify to that group body. As I identify as an American, I identify with that group body. As I identify, and so on and so forth. As a spiritual being, I belong to that collective. As I identify with so many different things, I belong to the egregore and the group body of them. And even, by the way, a sports team has its own egregore. And I've experienced this when you go to a match and the team is losing and the collective starts singing the song for the, I remember I went to a Rangers game. It was the same thing. When the moment we started screaming, "Let's go, Ranger, let's go," and the next thing you know, to go. And the Rangers won. There is usually a way to call forth the power of the collective or the egregore that will allow it to perform. So as you belong to all of these things, what the practice of non-attachment is teaching, in order for you to become enlightened, you have to let go of all of them. Because everywhere you're connected to the group body, you have an identity. You identify as belonging to that collective. And you have to somehow let go and surrender of everything. And in the process of that surrender, and it's not going to be easy. For example, the role that you play in your family, to start somewhere close to us. If you are the provider, if you are the funny one, or if you are the healer of the family, if you are, the scapegoat, if you are the whatever role that you play in the family, that becomes an identity. All right? And what I mean by identity, I don't mean it to mean that it's your actual spiritual vibratory signature. That's your authentic self. It's completely different. What I'm trying to say to you is that those things, those connections that we call identity, are more like a mask or persona, what I would call a false personality module. And we claim connection because no one wants to be ostracized to these various group bodies as a way to allow us to function. Whereas our true spiritual vibratory signature or true authentic core is buried deep, deep inside of us where no one can see it. But we use all these external personas as a way so that we can exist in the world. So now, as you're getting closer and closer to the deeper work that needs to be done, you will begin to have to shed those first personality modules that you belong to. Maybe you begin to let go of the bonnet or the hat or the role that you're playing for the family. Maybe you're not the provider. Maybe you're not, there's somebody who's always the fixer that fixes everything. There is somebody that's always the strong arm, the enforcer. This is in all group bodies. And maybe in this instance, you decide, okay, I'm surrendering all of this. This is not the role that I choose to play. As I evolve into my spiritual identity and my authentic self, my true authentic core, I'm going to let go of that role, because that role is a mask. It's not truly who I am. And that role is defining me and holding me hostage and still in the egregore of the family or of the community, of the whatever collective that I belong to. I am not defining myself as being simply the enforcer or the fixer or the repairer for everybody else. I choose to allow myself to exist as the universe choose to allow me to discover the newness that exists in the horizon. I don't know what it is, where I'm going, but there's a newness in the horizon, and I'm going to let it render in front of me, and I'm letting go of this old belief on who I was. Maybe some of you identify yourself as being a victim. Some of you are the bullies. You need to let go of all of this and surrender those identities and allow yourself to move into a discovery mode, an exploratory mode, so that you can discover who you really are and not be defined by a preconceived identity, meaning it was inherited, it was given to you by the environment, but it didn't spring forth from the blessed field and from your soul and your authentic core. So as this is going on, you will begin to notice more and more there are things that are possibly that you have to let go. You will notice maybe you have to let go of, certain friends, maybe certain family members, certain relationships that are toxic. You're welcome. You're welcome, Marjorie. You have to let go of all of these things and realize that it's not, at this point, it's not for you. It's no longer for you. And you have to say, I'm not, I am being predeterminedly defined in my core. That's not who I am. And if it is not me, why do I keep behaving that way? And since everything is being deconstructed into the 3D, I am surrendering these masks I'm wearing. And in this instance, if the mask is connected to a relationship, if it's connected to a role that I play with my family, if it's connected to friends, I had noticed, for example, say the friends, a series of friends that I have up in the Catskill, I bought my house, I renovated, blah, blah, blah. They never come to my house. I keep inviting them all the time. And I have to keep coming to the house. I'm like, this is not a friendship. Not a friendship. I don't need this. This is not the way it works. And I'm ending the whole thing, and without saying I'm ending it, I just stopped going to the events. I'm busy, I'm doing something else, and thank you for the invite, blah, blah, blah. And eventually they stop inviting me. And I don't need that kind of connection. And plus, part of it also is that their events were socially wonderful, but there was a lot of drinking. I drank a little bit, and at the time, maybe when I initially met them, I drank a lot more because I'm not a saint. The halo is slightly tilted, and now I've moved into a place where My conversation in the gathering that I do are more deeply, profoundly spiritual. And the people that gather, although we do a little bit of wine, a little bit of sometimes mixed drink and cocktail, but for the most part, the conversation is about alignment, spirituality, and playing the role that we're supposed to play. And they have nothing, well, they have little to contribute. They're in a different bus. They're lovely people. I don't mean to say they're bad people. I want you to understand what I'm saying. But I have less and less in common with a lot of people, places, and communities. And I have to realize that I have to separate myself to more and more, and I have to let go of the whatever I was projecting on the outside, that was the false personality module. I have to let go of it. I have to realize that I'm something else and I'm morphing. It's like the butterfly going into the cocoon. I'm going to the chrysalis stage where everything inside of me, this is what happened to the butterfly. The reason the wiggle when on the caterpillar, the reason when they wiggle into the, when they're in the cocoon, is that their entire body liquefy. All of the pieces inside of them, all the molecules liquefy before they change and transform into a butterfly. So I have to go through the same process if I'm going to get my wings. I have to realize that I have to let go and drop many, many things, including how I identify myself to my race, to my nation, my people, to my gender, to my spiritual community, the way I identify myself as a teacher or not a teacher, until I reduce, and I have to let go of all of this. And until I get myself to a point of realizing, if I eliminate all of these false personality modules, what remains behind? Who am I in my core? What is my true identity? If I let go of all of this. Because, for example, women have a way of defining themselves with their emotional relationship. Men define themselves for the most part, and this is the persona. Men define themselves for the most part with their profession. But there's more to it than that. And you're not just a mother or an architect, an engineer, you know, or a .com marketer, or whatever it is that you're doing. Strategist, marketer, whatever you want to call it. You're not just that. You're much more. And as you begin to now understand the true value of who you are and the power that exists when you let go of these false projections that somehow consciously and unconsciously you agreed to create and to park yourself into as a buffer to allow you to exist in the world and feel a semblance of love and acceptance. So as all of this is taking place for you, you need to begin to, and the way I'm doing this, the actual technique that I use, aside from having this intellectual conversation in my head, where I'm beginning to say, I'm not this, I'm not my profession, I'm not my emotional relationship, I'm not the role that my family want me to play, that I play in my family, I'm not the role that I play at work. I am not the my race. I'm not my gender. I am not my nation. And I'm not, to a degree, not even a human being per se. I have to say this very carefully, because who I really am is an incarnation of God in human form, but I am an incarnation of God. So when the Dalai Lama talks about the absence of existence and self-identity, he encapsulated the entire process with these two things. I have to figure out a way to surrender all these things. Because till I do, my connection to all of them through this coding with the egregore and the mask and the personality that connects me to the egregore, it's like you wearing an oxygen mask and thinking you can breathe, when in fact, if you take the mask out, the persona out, you realize you don't need it, you can breathe perfectly. So it's to find in us the strength of this exploration. And again, it's emotional intelligence work, but it's deep and profound emotional intelligence. It's not the surface stuff about I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling that and the other. This is about your entire, it's a deconstruction of your identities. You know, so many of us, for example, as I'm talking, as a man, I am not, well, if you can get to a state of realizing I'm not a man, because this is not who I am in essence. I am much more than my gender. As a spiritual incarnated manifestation of the divine. And when you're talking about color, I'm not just my race. My soul has no color. My soul has no gender. And as I go deeper and deeper, I'm beginning to realize all of these things are designed as a way to connect me and park me in place and stop me from evolving and merging with the emptiness. So and it takes somebody that has a lot of emotional maturity to be able to do this, because most people will think that you're crazy if you say you're not your gender, you're not your race, you're not your, you know, if you say all these things, people will think that you've lost your mind, you're cuckoo, because it's a big existential leap to take. To say, I am not none of these identities, and I'm going to define myself into an empty and vast field. I am jumping into a vast and endless field. And in that field, I'm going to allow whatever shows up for me as my emerging identity to ground into me. This requires a tremendous amount of trust. This requires a tremendous amount of courage. Because if you don't have it, you won't be able to do this. So as we are going through this process and we are moving and trying to identify these various parts of us, you just have to begin and you have to identify, and it's a personal to do, you have to identify all the places where you've created a projection, an external projection that's locking you into a behavior, an identity, and that everyone is mirroring it back to you as you being the strong one, the enforcer, the victim, the whatever it is that. And if you can move away from this and you begin to show yourself as being something else. And in this instance, I'm encouraging you to go to the emptiness. And one of the sentences that I've been using in my meditation when I do my universal breath exercise over and over again. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness and endless luminosity. So I'm going to release all attachments, and in this instance, all of the things that I've just talked about for the past hour and change. I'm releasing all attachments and all the fears that they create and all control, attempt at control. And I'm now surrendering all of it into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. Let us focus now on what is that great emptiness and luminosity. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, right here, they talk about the indivisible emptiness and luminosity. That truly the way the world is created, there is a yin and a yang kind of force or pairing of the womb, often referred to in the spiritual writing and in many other traditions as the emptiness, like a vacuum. And it is in this vacuum, and here's the mistake that a lot of people make. They keep thinking that the vacuum is black or empty or undesirable. We as light worker like the light. And we focus only on the light, and we keep forgetting that the light and the emptiness cannot be separated, where one and the other one begins, and vice versa, to create the infinity loop. And you cannot separate the emptiness from the luminosity. It's like you're trying to breathe by simply exhaling all the time and not inhaling. It doesn't make any sense. It's a cyclical process, and both things belong to it. So what this short sentence does for me when I repeat it And I do this every day, every morning. I mean, particularly now with everything that's going on. I repeat it every day and every morning to give myself an opportunity to release all of this coding, all of these attachments, all of these things that are locking me into these identities and causing me to experience all this discomfort, all of this pain, and all the suffering. And as I do this, I release all attachments, all fears, and all controls. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. And I repeat it over and over and over again, thinking about all of the attachment that I'm feeling in my body, all the things that are making me feel unsafe, all of the things that are making me feel scared, all of the connections and the coding to group body that I belong to. I release all of them. And as I do this, I enumerate them, then it begins to, it's like a knot. Things begin to unknot, and I begin to feel, like I'm releasing. And when you release this way and things are unknotting, you will enter first into the emptiness. And the emptiness, the way you experience the emptiness is that you experience it as a complete stillness that is filled. When you're in that state, you have no thought, but you have a sense of unbelievably being unburdened. Like if you were carrying multiple anvil and weight that they've been cut off, and you feel extremely light and euphoric for the release. So the emptiness or the so-called darkness is not dark because that sensation is invaluable. The unburdening. That's the non-attachment. That's what the Dalai Lama talks about when he says the absence of existence and self-identity. If you can get yourself to a point where the only identity that you have is the nature of your soul, or you as an incarnation of the divine. But for that to happen, all these other things and role that we're playing in the world, they have to go. Emotionally, you have to release all of them. I'm not saying tomorrow you're not going to talk to this person or that person in your family. You're still going to be there, but in your emotional body, the way you were projecting it out to them, you're going to change it. So the energetic dynamic or the coding that happened between you and them, you change the frequency and the vibration, and you free yourself. You liberate yourself. Any questions, any comments? So as you're doing this, once you release and you get unburdened, you're going to feel at times it's almost like euphoria, because it feels so good to be in a state where you're not trying to control or hold yourself in a false pretense of being something that you're not. What happens next, this is where the luminosity comes in. The true role of who you are, of what you are, shows up once the unburdening has a time frame. It kind of, after a while, it peters out to the degree that you've released and you unburden yourself, like you throw a rock into a lake. To the degree that you do this and you let go completely, you will feel incredibly relief and releases of all kind. And then on the back end, there'll come an echo that will come back to you. And that echo that returns is the luminosity, which is a feedback that tells you who you are. And for me, when this happened, I feel not only serenity, but a lot of time it's ecstatic joy. And often a frequency of liberation. And when you're in that state, climate change, everything else that's happening in the world will not touch you. That's the point. That's the point I'm driving to. When you're in that emotional state, you become safe and nothing will touch you. Any questions, any comments? All right, let's take a 5-minute break, and the back end of this, we'll do the closing meditation. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Let your head and your heart sync with each other. And let it create a morphogenic awareness a sensation of quantum entanglement and connectedness with everything that exists. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. As you become aware of the identity role that you play in your family. I am not this identity. Now take a very deep breath from the core of the earth And let this energy move counterclockwise through the bottom of your feet, passing through your whole body and disconnecting this false identity, and let it be released completely into the emptiness. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. Become aware of your projected identity. In your work environment. I am not this identity. Take a very deep breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, passing through you, exiting outside of your head, and let it all be released into the emptiness. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of the role that I play and projection I create with my friends. I am not this identity. Take a very deep breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move counterclockwise to the bottom of your feet, passing through you, dislodging this false belief, this false identity, and releasing it completely into the emptiness. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of the projections that I create in my relationship with institutions in the planet, I am not this identity. Take a very deep breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, passing through you, dislodging this false belief and identity, and releasing it into the vastness and the emptiness. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of the role and the projections that are connected to the light community and the service that I provide. I am not this identity. Take a very deep breath from the core of the earth and let it move counterclockwise to the bottom of your feet, dislodging all of this identity, and let it all be released into the blessed field. I release all attachments, all fears, and all control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of the role and the projections that are connected to my race. I am not this identity. Take a very deep breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, passing through you, dislodging this false belief and releasing it completely into the emptiness and the blessed field. I become aware of my gender and the projections that are connected to it. I am not this identity. Now take a very deep breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, dislodging all of it, and let it all be released into the infinity times infinity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of the projections and the role that I play in relationship to my nation. I am not this identity. Now take a very deep breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, passing through you, dislodging this false belief, and let it all be released into source. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness and endless luminosity. In the stillness, the unburdening, and the release of the emptiness. May I discover my true nature. Free at last. Free at last. Free at last. I am free at last. Take a very deep and slow breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. How you all doing?
Knocked out.
Hmm.
Thank you, Pierre.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I won't keep you all because I know there's a lot for you to process from this, because this is very subtle and very in-depth, and it's a very profound existential shift that needs to happen. I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you to all my Patreon subscribers. Thank you all, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night. Thank
Good
you,
night.
Pierre.
Good night. Bye-bye, everyone.